Let's look at the MapStyle dataset now. Now remember, the main purpose of a dataset is to return a single instance of its underlying data. Let's consider an e-commerce dataset where we are returning the order details. And our orders dataset returns a specific instance of the data by indexing. So orders at index 0 will return one order, and orders at index 1 will return another order, and so on. So when we implement a dataset, we need to make sure that it supports the index operator. Another thing to note is the same index should always return the same instance, because when we are sampling, and typically when we do training across multiple epochs, we do not want same index returning different orders, because that might mess up the way we are doing sampling. And finally, we need to have the len method implemented, which will return the total number of instances in our data store. So for example, going back to our computer vision model, computer vision data set with 300 million images, well, len of that will need to return 300 million. So what I've done here is I've cloned the Git repository of PyTorch on my local computer, and I've opened the code in VS Code. So let's look for dataset. We want the torch.utils.data. And here we can see that this is an abstract class that represents the dataset. And the methods that we want to overwrite are the index operator, which is this dunder get item dunder. This is something that a dataset child class will have to implement. And there's also the plus operator that they've implemented for us already using the concat dataset. And I'll explain what this is in a bit. And finally, we need to implement the dunder len dunder method, which will give us the len function. Let's go ahead and implement a toy mapped dataset based on what we've learned so far. So let's import numpy, torch, and then dataset from torch.utils.data. We'll call it my mapped dataset. It needs to derive from the parent dataset class. And what we are passing here is how many features, which is n, and how many rows, which is m. And it's going to create a m by n matrix of continuous integers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And we'll need to have a random number generator as well. So let's create a default random number generator from NumPy. So we can have the target or the label as a number from 0 and 1. And we'll choose it with probability 0.7 and 0.3. So it will choose 0 with probability 0.7 and 1 with probability 0.3. Now let's go ahead and implement the index operator. And here we'll simply return the element at index id x for both x and y. So it returns a tuple with the first row of the matrix and the target label. And implementing the len method is really simple. Essentially, we just return m, which is the shape of x. And now let's see this data set in action. Let's just go through each element. Now let's use the len function to get the number of elements in the data set and the index operator to actually get each element. And as expected, we see that each element comprises of a row from x and the label y, which is either 0 or 1.